This is A Word, a podcast from Slate. I'm your host, Jason Johnson. For decades, the reputation of Black fathers has been sullied by stereotypes and misconceptions. Sean Williams, the founder of the Dad Gang, says enough is enough.
And the media just does not portray Black men as dads. And even when they do portray Black dads, it's this like really shady, like the family is broken, which in many cases it is, but that's not what it is in its entirety. That's not the full story.
Sean Williams on redefining the narrative around Black fatherhood. Coming up on A Word with me, Jason Johnson. Stay with us.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to A Word, a podcast about race and politics and everything else. I'm your host, Jason Johnson. It's Father's Day weekend, and many dads will be smiling as they open another ugly tie or Old Spice gift box. For Black families, Father's Day also comes with another round of media stories, lamenting the absence of Black fathers from their kids' lives. But that stereotype isn't the reality for most families, and there's evidence to back that up. Research conducted by the CDC found that Black men tend to be more engaged in their children's daily care than white dads. So why doesn't the public image of Black dads reflect that? Our next guest has dedicated his time to reshaping the narrative and uplifting Black fathers. Sean Williams is the founder of the Dad Gang, an organization set on changing the way the world views Black fatherhood. He's also author of the children's books Girl Dad and Boy Dad. The Dad Gang has been applauded by celebrities like Oprah Winfrey and earned an Unsung Hero Award from the NAACP. We're delighted to have him here. Sean Williams, welcome to A Word.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to say this up front. I am not a dad, but I got a lot of godkids. I have a lot of students, so I play a dad role. So tell me the uninformed, what is the Dad Gang and what inspired you to start it?
Absolutely. Well, let me first start by saying, just because you're not a biological father, you definitely are a father to many. And I think a lot of men sometimes don't realize the roles that they play, even when they're not biological, like a barber, a coach, you know what I mean? Even a janitor. Like, these kids look at able-bodied men who are figures in their life like a father figure. So always think you might not be biological, but you definitely are a father figure to many. But the Dad Gang, right? I like to call the Dad Gang like my fourth child. I have 3 children, but I'm so passionate about the Dad Gang and what we do there. I treat it like my baby as well. And the Dad Gang is just a social organization, an impact organization that we created in 2016 to combat that myth, right? That stereotype, that misconception that Black dads were inactive. In 2016, I was on my second child at the time, and what had happened was I was in a supermarket with my daughter. She was a baby. She was strapped to my chest, and a woman approached me to give me what she thought was a compliment by saying, first she asked if the child was mine. And you're looking at a fairly young man with my hat backwards, with a baby strapped to my chest, right? On a random day, like it might have been like a Tuesday or something, midday, I was just running errands. And this was, let me get the baby tired. Let me have some daddy-daughter time. And she asked if the child was mine. And I said, it is my child, yes. And then she proceeded to say, it's so good that you stuck around for this. It's like, and it's really important. Then, whatever other things that she started to say. And I was so shocked because she thought it was a compliment. She didn't even hesitate to think that giving me that backhanded pat on the back would have been a good thing, So I looked at her and I said, for the record, that is not the compliment you want to give a Black man. Some might say yes and, oh, thank you for that. But some might be very offended, like myself, who's a very devoted father. I've always been. This is my second child. Furthermore, I know many dads who were very present, don't believe what you see. But in that moment, this is 2016. I was living in a predominantly white neighborhood. The neighborhood was great, but with me being one of 2 Black families on that block, I understood that when they saw me it wasn't their average. They don't usually wake up and see me, another black man mowing his lawn on this particular block. And I'm not saying it's like that everywhere, but in my scenario, I was in a neighborhood where I was really the minority, right? This older woman, she felt good enough to, like, he seems like a nice guy. I'm going to tell him, give him this compliment. And I just understood that, you know what? It's the lack of knowledge. It's the lack of seeing amazing dads, because all that she's being fed is what you see in the media. And the media just does not portray black men as dads. And even when they do portray black dads, it's this like really shady, like the family is broken, which in many cases it is, but that's not what it is in its entirety. That's not the full story, right? So ultimately that moment changed my life because I was already so passionate about being a dad. I was passionate about being a brother to my friends. And it just merged all of my skills at the time. I was a creative director. I knew how to position brands in a way that would be appealing to the public. I'm also super involved with my kid and offended and passionate. And it just took all of my skills and everything that I was about at the time. And I kind of poured it into the dad gang, just saying, I don't know if it's going to work, but my answer to this, my response to what she said is I'm not going to fight her or argue with her. I'm going to show you guys what Black fatherhood looks like. And I was going to use my friends, myself, not content that we're creating, but just actual experiences. And Jason, I'll tell you, within weeks, the page went from 100 to 500. A couple more weeks, it went from 500 to 2,000. You know what I mean? It went from 2,000 to 3,000 or 4,000, and the numbers just kept on swelling. And I understood obviously it wasn't just me, right? It's most Black men that were experiencing this. So, and that's basically how it started.
What specifically does Dad Gang do? Do you guys have meetings? Do you have conferences and panels? Do you do sort of seminars to help new dads or older dads? Like, what do you do to debunk stereotypes about Black fathers? And for the audience sake, where are you located?
I was based in New York, right? When we started the organization, obviously as a social media platform, it goes everywhere, right? So I can't particularly say that we are in one location as the March of Dads goes from New York to LA to Atlanta. We activate in DC. We go wherever, we feel like we can give the following a proper activation, right? But essentially what the Dad Gang started out to do was to circulate those positive images. Early on, when I realized the community needed a little bit more, not to mention I was also in the thralls of fatherhood. So my friends and we were going out. We were the original Dad Gang, right? We would link up every few Sundays. We'd have play dates. We'd go for a stroll. So within a few months, I said, let me invite the following. And if anybody's in New York that wants to connect with us or take a daddy stroll with us, maybe they might show up. After I sent out that first invitation, maybe a couple of weeks later, when we showed up to Prospect Park for a daddy stroll, there were 80 dads and strollers waiting. So that kind of triggered like, okay, it's as much about the community as it is about the narrative change. When you're in the company of 80 young fathers, right? Young and old, nonetheless, but with young children, passionate about being fathers and passionate about the stereotype, you get goosebumps because it's not something you've been at before. So to answer your question, we do any and everything. We do panels. We do workshops where dads can learn how to swaddle babies. We do fatherhood circles where we could just have open, candid, authentic conversation. We introduce them to different wellness practices, meditation, sound baths, breath work, right? And then there's our public demonstrations like the March of Dads, which is also a bonding activity for dads and the children. It's also a community building event where once we leave that city, there's these hundreds of dads that just came out. And we encourage them to, not just for the Dad Gang platform, but you guys need to swap numbers because there's a village, there's a community, but there's a village. And that village it's not necessarily going to be your best friend that you grew up with. They might not be a dad when you become a dad. Now you have these men who are trying to figure out fatherhood, venting or telling all of their stories to their childhood friends who might be in a different place. So when you show up to a Dad Gang event, you're sharing space with men who are in the same space as you in terms of life, right? Like your young dads or new dads or older dads, you're going to find men who are going through exactly what you're going through. And these are the men that you have to cleave onto. I say to the team all the time, it's supporting dads by any means necessary. And that's how we started the nonprofit, because when we would do these marches and we would share it on social media, some dads would comment, "Oh man, I wanted to be there, but my stroller wasn't good. I wanted to be there, but we couldn't insert whatever it is that, hindered them from coming to the march." So we said, we're in the position to try to help a few of these guys. What can we do to help them, right? So we created the nonprofit and we gave out about $30,000 worth of brand new strollers throughout New York. And that was our first random act of dadness that we did. We wrapped a truck with Dad Gang signage and literally we packed it from the front to the back pull down gate with strollers. And shout out to Bye Bye Baby. They donated a lot of those strollers. Dove donated things. And once we got out there, the testimonies that we got after the fact was like, dude, I don't know. The stroller was the last thing on our list of things to buy. We really helped people with just that alone. And then the following day or 2 days later, when we did the March of Dads, a lot of those individuals that we gave the strollers to were able to come out. And it was just incredible. It was incredible.
And so the organization, Random Acts of Dadness, you're specifically helping sort of fathers in need, fathers who are dealing with sort of financial challenges. What I always love about organizations like this is that you're on the ground, so you see things. As a new father, right, whether you are partnered with the mother of your child or not, what do you say are like the two things that fathers in need most struggle with financially, right? What are the two things where you meet a guy, he could be 50 years old, he could be 23 years old, and he's like, yo, these are the things that are hurting my pockets as a new father? What do you say the top two?
When you start to understand what it costs for childcare, or even putting your kid in karate, right, or these extracurricular activities, it's like paying a mortgage or rent, and it adds up. And you want to give your child, you want to expose them to new things, right? You also need the relief too. Sometimes you're battling between, can I afford to even put them in childcare? But you need to put them in childcare because you need to go to work. So it's like a crazy dynamic that you got to figure out. But, they say it all the time, like coming into fatherhood, one of the first things you hear is, oh man, I'm going to be broke. And it kind of gives you this fear of like, children are so expensive, which they are, right? It can be costly, but I hate when everybody approaches parenthood with a price tag. Because if you're really passionate and you're really in it, you start to understand that the money is not really just yours. The money that you have and the money that you make is to create safety and provide for your family, right? So life is expensive, period. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not just having a child that's expensive. Life is costly, right? And a part of life is to multiply and, have your children. So it's not about the price of the child per se. But I would say, to answer your question, I think childcare, that's a big ticket item for parents.
We're going to take a short break, and we come back more on the Dad Gang and redefining Black fatherhood. This is A Word with Jason Johnson. Stay tuned.
The sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
This is Jason Johnson, host of A Word, Slate's podcast about race and politics and everything else. I want to take a moment to welcome our new listeners. If you've discovered A Word and like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And let us know what you think by writing us at aword@slate.com. Thank you. You're listening to A Word with Jason Johnson. Today, we're talking about Black fatherhood with Sean Williams, the founder of the Dad Gang. So I want to hear a little bit more about your family life. Did you have a good relationship with your dad? Did that inspire you to where you are today? What was your family like, and how does that inform what you do in Dad Gang?
It's a great question. I love this question too, because a lot of people don't know initially because I am a great dad, right? And it was because I took notes of what not to do initially with my dad. Now he was present, right? He was there. He was an immigrant from Trinidad. Both my parents were from Trinidad. When we moved out here, my sister and I, we were born out in Brooklyn, but they struggled, right? And with a family of five, it was hard to keep a job, and he did his thing. So we were provided for, but that didn't leave a lot of room for him to, you know, play games with us or like try to bond. That was the last thing on his priority list, right? And I really grew up resenting him for that because I saw good dads and I saw, other sons that had close relationships with their dads. I saw the Cosby Show and the Fresh Prince and all of these images of the kind of relationship that I wanted with my dad, and I didn't have it, and I was very upset about it. So what I told myself early on was, when I have children, I know exactly what I'm not going to do, right? I'm going to play with these kids because I yearned to play with him, right? So I'm going to play with my kids. Forget it if I have a son. That kid is going to be my best friend because I'm thinking he's going to be just like me and he's going to be in my position. So I owe it to him to give him what I was missing. So I took a lot of notes of what my dad was doing, of what not to do. He did not completely fail. It was more so about the emotional aspect that didn't go as I thought it should go. But fast forward, I start my family, and I gave him a lot of grace because as I started to build my family, I had already had more education than he did. I had more money. I had therapy. I had social media. I had brotherhood. You know what I mean? I was raising a family in the country that I was born in. He left Trinidad, right? So all of these different things, I could not judge him on the same playing field that I was going to be operating at as a family man. And I also told myself, if there does come a moment when I can't perform for my kids, I want them to be able to extend the grace that I'm going to extend to my dad. Right. And it's something you don't think of, but now that I'm in his position, I'm like, there could be a moment where I do something and I'm not performing, and I don't want that kid to resent me for it. Right. So, I forgave him, and now we have an incredible relationship. Right. He's one of my best friends now. And I was able to show him how to use, things like forgiveness and love. Those are yours to use, and you don't run out of those things, right? You could weaponize love for your benefit, or forgiveness. We hold on to being angry when really and truly all I had to do was to forgive him to change his life and mine. And now I changed our entire family's lineage in terms of, like, I broke a cycle, not just downward to my son, but I went backwards to him. Now he says, I love you. And he wants to give his grandson a kiss, which is something that he didn't do for me because he was raised in a different generation.
So when you're talking to dads, what do you find are the different challenges when you guys are getting together and just talking, having a dad's group or whatever? Are there different challenges that you face as a father depending on when you get into the game? What's a challenge that a young dad faces that an older dad doesn't? What's a challenge that an older dad faces that a younger dad doesn't? And how do you guys sort of talk about that?
Great question. That's why it's really good that when we do have these fatherhood circles, we identify who the oldest dad in the room is and who's the youngest dad in the room, right? Who has the most kids from who's about to have a kid, because you start to understand fatherhood from all aspects and all ages. Some of the challenges that I can definitely speak to is, obviously, as an older dad, you lose a lot of stamina. Trying to keep up with a toddler if you're an older man is going to be a little challenging. But I think it's relative to not only your age, but also the age of the child, how involved you are as a dad. Like, if you're an older gentleman raising a younger child, these kids are running laps around you, right? But what you will have is wisdom and patience, where the younger dad might have the stamina to just run that kid out. Where he lacks wisdom, he has strength in physical strength, right? He has the ability to, like, just work more hours per se. Whereas the older gentleman might have more money, more wisdom, but doesn't need to exert himself physically. So I can speak to the challenges I had. My daughter, who was 19, I had her at 21. One of my challenges was trying to have a social life. Not that having a child cramps your social life, but it does, in a sense that there are times when, if you wanted to be outside, right, you wanted to be partying as a young man at 21, I wanted to hang out. And you want to be a good dad, but I also want to go hang out too, right? So now you got to sit there and figure that out, right? That's his challenge. That's the challenge of a young man. An older man might not have that challenge. He's lived a life.
So you wrote two books. You have Girl Dad and Boy Dad. Tell us a little bit about those books and what inspired you to write them and how they differ. Girl dad has sort of became a popularized phrase after Kobe Bryant passed away, his daughter. But, we got boy dads too. So what's the difference in these books and what inspired you?
Well, Kobe's passing and him coining that phrase girl dad is definitely what inspired Girl Dad in and of itself. At that point, we had already had the Dad Gang organization for about 3 or 4 years. I was absorbing a lot of content, and I kind of understood or saw a difference in when dads would braid a daughter's hair, right? And I would see the response that we would get from dads really just showing content that had involved dads and daughters. And one of the things that I also noticed in sharing dad gang content was a lot of men coming into fatherhood. They want a boy for the sake of they think that only a boy could fulfill their legacy. So what I got from when Kobe said that phrase was like, it's not about the gender. You know what I mean? He has girls. He goes, I'm a girl dad. That's what I am. And I still got this girl who's going to go crazy on the basketball court. I didn't need a son to fulfill the legacy of my lineage, my child being a basketball star. You know what I mean? So I think it was really important. And I loved how girl dads across the nation was like, yes, like he articulated something that a lot of men probably never articulated, right? Like there's always like, oh man, if you didn't get a boy, oh, well, I guess you got girls. You know what I mean? Like, and although we love our girls, it took a sports figure, an icon like Kobe to say, I'm a proud girl dad and proud of it, for us to really understand, like, you know what? It needs to be said a little bit more often for the men who are struggling with, like, man, I really want a son to fulfill that need to have a legacy. It's not about the gender of the child, right? So once I kind of understood that, we started sharing girl dad content, and I had a couple book ideas, but when I spoke to HarperCollins and we went back and forth with a few ideas, and we kind of just understood that Girl Dad needed to be written for those dads who they are proud to be a girl dad, right? They are proud of their daughters, and being a girl dad is not just about ponytails and dolls, right? It's not just about wearing pink. So I kind of wanted to shift that narrative around what the gender norm would be, or what the stereotypical thing for a girl dad would be, and put that into a fun book for dad to just be proud of. What's funny about dropping Girl Dad or writing Girl Dad was talking to HarperCollins, and of course it was inspired by Kobe and him coining Girl Dad. But here I am with my son, right? Who I'm having a very different experience, because for the boy's boy, right? He is a stereotypical boy that likes green and likes to play in dirt. I could not do this without having a companion book, because there are two experiences going on here. And that's why we also did Boy Dad as well.
So I want to talk a little bit about our images of fathers, right? And this is really interesting to me, because when I think about growing up, there's a big contrast between sort of televised dads, in my experience, certainly televised Black dads, and the ones we were hearing about, right? So, televised Black dads, it was Bill Cosby, it was Rock. Talk a little bit about some of the positive pop culture images of dads that you saw growing up, or that you see today, that we should probably lean into when it comes to Black fathers.
We grew up in an interesting time where there was the stereotype about Black dads in media, but then there's also these shows. I think a lot of the heroes that I saw, they're like doing such incredible stuff, but content is not what they were here for, right? They were here just to be dads. So what media was not showing was the real, not scripted, like the things that are not scripted. In media, they highlight the deadbeats. There's no show about the hundreds and thousands and millions of Black dads that are doing incredible things, that are defying that stereotype. There's no story about them, right? There's no platform. So the Dad Gang platform, we built it just on real life, regular, average men who are incredible fathers that know how to parent various ages. And if you do get an opportunity, or if somebody records them in a candid moment, those are the ones that really go viral. The ones where people are not expecting it to really do anything. And I would post it, and it'd be these really small moments where it goes super viral. So I couldn't even tell you. I mean, it's a great question, but I couldn't even tell you who are the pop culture dads that come to mind, because a lot of times I'm thinking of my friends, you know what I mean? Like the dads who are right next to me who really have bolstered the Dad Gang platform, because that's what we wanted to see, right? But I do think Blackish did a good job, by the way. I think they did a great job. And, like that's like our Cosby Show of today. I think This Is Us. I think, some of those dads are some of the dads that come to mind now, which I think they did a really good job of portraying a very nurturing and intentional dad who understands that he is a Black man in America. These dads understood that you can't deny that there is a stereotype, there's a stigma about it. So us Black men, whether on TV or in real life, we are operating with the chip on our shoulder. We're not just operating for the sake of like, yeah, we're going to be good dads, but we know how the world looks at us. So we have a even more duty to show up in the world performing better than the rest.
I want to add to that because it's very interesting to me. We know the prevailing stereotypes that white supremacy has put on Black fatherhood, hypersexual, absentee, criminalized, violent, the whole thing. We hear that from racist white folks all the time. It's baked into sometimes public health and literature. What disappoints me and frustrates me sometimes is when you hear that from actual Black folks. One of the things that's sort of interesting is like we used to hear that a couple times from former President Obama. Talk a little bit about politicians. Has Dad Gang worked with elected officials to say, hey, look, this is what Black fathers are doing? Have you been talked to by members of Congress or senators saying, hey, can you give me advice on policy because you're working with dads? Talk a little bit about politically how Black fatherhood is presented.
So I'm from New York, so I am going to give a lot of credit to a lot of our local politicians in New York, one of which was when I started the Dad Gang. I looked to my left and right, and a few of the new dads and young dads that were a part of my crew. One of them, his name is Kevin Riley, an amazing, incredible dad. He's a council member in Bronx, New York. And the Dad Gang and what we were doing was a part of his campaign because he was very involved and instrumental in us activating on social media and in person, right? And what he did and what we did was we spoke to the mayor, we spoke to, the borough presidents, we spoke to a lot of them about not just black fathers being present, but a lot of times they're not present because there's no support, there's no help. We get into these court systems and the court system already paints Black men as criminalized already. So forget it if you're a dad. If for a lot of men, if they don't petition the court to figure out a child custody situation, they're already positioned in as a deadbeat, as the non-custodial parent. You know what I mean? Off rip, that like that's just how they're positioned. And I've heard so many dads come in that position, with that complaint, like, man, like I can provide more for the kid. I'm actually more available and more equipped, but the judge still didn't rule in like my favor. So what we did, and I'm thankful to a lot of those local politicians that kind of heard what we were saying, that there's awareness that needs to happen with fatherhood, right? It's a group of men that are not being spoken to. So what we did was we were able to get Fatherhood Recognition Month passed in New York City. So the month of June is now Fatherhood Recognition Month. And shout out to Councilmember Kevin Riley from getting that done. But also even Senator Bailey, who's another senator in New York. He has 3 kids. Shout out to him. He's always been super active in helping us with random acts of dadness. He comes out to all of our events in any way that he can help us. These politicians, I think they understand when they are dads too, and they are on the ground and they are seeing what's going on. By the time they get a whiff of the Dad Gang, they kind of understand that we all have a duty. It's not just Sean Williams's mission. If you have resources that you can lend in terms of platform, financial resources, spaces that we can use, they've all been very generous with helping us spread the word and get the support that can help Black dads like myself and others, become better dads. So funny enough, we on June 4th, like a few weeks ago, we were recognized on the Senate floor in Albany. We were given a legislative resolution that highlighted March of Dads. It highlighted Random Acts of Dadness. It highlighted the Dad Gang for what we'd done. And that was a piece of legislation that Senator Bailey presented us with on the floor. So they are bringing up the work we're doing. And also, the awareness that men, period, fathers, period, need programming and need to be spoken to. We are like a lost or forgotten demographic of people that I think they're starting to understand that we do need the support, and we are present.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, more about Black fatherhood with Sean Williams. This is A Word with Jason Johnson. Stay tuned. You're listening to A Word with Jason Johnson. Today, we're talking with Sean Williams, the founder of The Dad Gang, about fatherhood in the Black community. So you guys have a big march this upcoming Father's Day. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, how'd you put it together? Who's sponsoring it? What are the themes? Where in the country is it? Tell us a little about your Father's Day march.
Oh, man. So this is our 5th annual tour. And this is the first time we're actually doing the Father's Day March, not in New York. Shout out to New York. We love you. We will be back. But this year we're doing it in LA. Really big because we were able to partner with Lego, one of the biggest toy companies in the world. So we are super excited. We have the most numbers we've ever had. And what's really dope about this partnership and this march is we've attached a play experience to the back end of the march. So now we're not just going to march and do our thing on the street, but we're going to come back to an experience where, we co-created a program with Lego that it really harnesses the power of play and how we can use play to bond with our children. And using those Lego bricks to be that piece that we use to generate the conversation and foster a deeper connection with the kids. So this is going to be a really good Father's Day. And the good thing about not just this Father's Day activation or this Father's Day march, but we're adding that aspect, that play experience to every march that we do in the country this year. So this Father's Day, again, we're out there. Shout out to all the dads that are expecting to come out in LA. We are super excited to activate with them. And then after that, we're going to go to New York. We're going to go to Atlanta. We're going to go to DC. We'll probably go to Houston, a few other places. But we're putting the pieces together. If you see what I did there.
I always end the show with sort of these kinds of questions. If somebody's hearing this for the first time, there's somebody who's hearing this is like, hey, this is great. Heck, I wish, I'm going to go find these guys online. I'm going to find their Instagram. I'm going to find their TikTok. I'm going to find their Twitter. What can someone listening right now do to support the mission of the Dad Gang? What can someone do if they want to help what you guys are doing, bring future events or something else like that to their city? What can people listening right now do?
One, I would say follow the page and share the content. What we set out to change the way the world views us, and the only way we can do that is if the world sees us. We want to encourage people who want to get involved to share the content, but also shoot us a DM, shoot us an email. We'll activate because, again, this is the work that we're doing is not about the partnerships. It's not about the sponsorships. The men are there. The volunteers are the dad. If there's an opportunity that you guys want to connect us to, it's as easy as getting in contact with us. Myself, I'm behind that. Instagram, our partners, the entire crew shares in the responsibility of circulating the images, answering on Instagram, even facilitating the events. Like, it's really us that come to these cities and get right there with the dads in these cities. I would say follow us online, check out the website, but just spreading awareness about the fact that we exist, right? So that's what I would say. Of course, we'd love to take donations to help us do what we got to do. But the first place you can see us would be at our website and on social media platforms. We're there.
There's going to be a lot of people this weekend. This is their first Father's Day, right? This is their very, very, very first Father's Day. What is one piece of advice that you would offer first-time new Black fathers? First-time father this weekend, what's your advice to them?
Celebrate with the kids, right? Savor every moment because it goes by really fast, and kudos to every new dad. If you've been a dad for a day, or even if you're expecting a dad, kudos to you. Happy Father's Day to you. This is our moment. Everybody goes so crazy for mothers and Mother's Day, but I think we have to realize too, celebrating yourself. It's okay to celebrate yourself. Whatever you need to do, accept the macaroni painting and accept the little corny tie that they're going to give, but treat yourself to something as well. You know what I mean? Like, the job that we are doing, rearing these kids and raising these kids, it's a gift. Not everybody is that lucky. There are people and couples that are trying to have babies that can't have them. So the position we're in, we can't take it for granted.
Sean Williams is the founder of The Dad Gang, an organization aimed at uplifting Black fatherhood. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a word for this week. The show's email is aword@slate.com. This episode was produced by Kristie Taiwo-Makanjuola. Ben Richmond is Slate's Senior Director of Podcast Operations. Alicia Montgomery is the Vice President of Slate Audio. Our theme music was produced by Don Will. I'm Jason Johnson. Tune in next week for A Word.
At the Coca-Cola Company, Keurig Dr. Pepper, and PepsiCo, some of our bottles can be remade in a whole new way, using 100% recycled plastic. New bottles using no new plastic except the caps and labels. Learn more at madetoberemade.org.